Hey, Pretty Girl Club. I want to talk about how a lot of women who complain about colorism, they're actually conflating xenophobia with colorism. So I noticed that a lot of the colorism content creators here on YouTube, a lot of those women are Nigerian, or maybe they're like they have a background from the Caribbean or somewhere outside of the United States. And oftentimes these people, they don't have the same like cultural customs and practices and even dating and flirting styles as African Americans. By the way, please join the Patreon if you want to hear more about dating styles, dating privilege. Here on YouTube, I tend to only talk about pretty privilege, but on the Patreon, we go into all the other privileges. So, one of the privileges of being American is that you may experience more options in the American dating market because you could date an African American, a white American, an Asian American, and you kind of have that similarity of being from the same country. So even if you have a different race or skin color, your background as an American person and kind of being familiar with a lot of American memes and like cultural nostalgic images and stuff, having that sort of bonding behavior in the dating market, that does affect you. So I've noticed that some black women, they'll be on like TikTok or YouTube complaining about not getting dates or something. And then when they start describing what happens, it's actually more so xenophobia as opposed to colorism. So, for example, if a man says, hey, I prefer like African American women as opposed to Nigerian women. Okay, well, that's not colorism because African American, you can be dark skinned and African American. Somebody not wanting to date you is not colorism. We know that the definition of colorism is when you are disparaging someone based on their actual skin complexion. So if the person you're dating doesn't say anything negative about your actual skin complexion, that is not colorism. Being called an African booty scratcher when you're a child, that is actually xenophobia because they called you African booty scratcher. They didn't say dark skin black booty scratcher. They didn't mention your skin color. So therefore, that is actually xenophobia and not colorism. Another thing that a lot of unambiguous women who are from other countries won't admit is that a lot of these women see American men as the prize. It doesn't matter if he's African American, white American, Asian American. I have seen so many divester videos or like swirling videos where there are mainly unambiguous African women, and their goal is to be some sort of mail order bride for some sort of American man. So I think that another aspect that happens is kind of like supply and demand, where you've got all of these unambiguous black women from all over the world fighting to get in the presence of an American man because in their eyes, the American male is kind of like their Prince Charming in the same way that the United States is almost like their version of the Promised Land. So a lot of these women, they view men who are American as being the prize, whether he's African American, white American. And so when they go on dating apps and stuff and they can't get access to these men, then suddenly they want to blame the isms, or they want to say that like the algorithm is automatically racist, as if the algorithm like has a paper bag test that it's doing on people before it shows you to white American men. Another thing that I've noticed with some unambiguous African women or women from other countries is this whole concept where they will say that African Americans have no culture. And they'll say, like, you were slaves or, whatever. They'll try to equate you to being a slave. But my question is, okay, do you keep the same energy for Asian Americans? Do you keep that same energy for white Americans? Do you tell them that they have no culture? Do you tell Asian Americans that they have no culture and that back in the 18 and 1900s they were building railroads on the West Coast and immigrating here from their countries and that they were being put into labor camps? Do you talk about that? Do you tell Asian Americans and white Americans who are Scottish, Irish, Italian, but they've never been to Scotland, they've never been to Italy, they've never been to Ireland? Do you tell those types of Americans that they have no culture? Why is the smoke only for African Americans, but then you have no smoke for white Americans, Asian Americans, Latin Americans? So I think that's another thing that causes some people to be turned off. And this is a sociology channel, so that's why I'm talking about this. So let's talk about collective image. Did you know that the collective image of your group can affect your personal dating life? Collective image, what that really means is, what is the stereotype of your people? What are the positive and negative stereotypes of your people group? So if people who are from all of these different countries and they're unambiguous, if they happen to have all these xenophobic mindsets towards different types of Americans, yet they are fighting tooth and nail to be a part of the American community, well, yeah, a lot of Americans of all races will be probably turned off by that, and they may prefer someone who is American. So even if it's a white American man who prefers a black American woman. So I think that that is a part of what's happening. It's more so xenophobia that a lot of these women are suffering from. It's not actual colorism, because in the examples that they give, like, oh, this guy won't date me, that's not colorism. A man not wanting to fuck you, that's not colorism. Especially if he doesn't even mention your skin complexion in a negative light. Someone preferring an American person, or someone who prefers someone who speaks English as their first language, that is actually not colorism. Now, if they're saying negative things about your ethnic group, and if they're saying negative things about your nationality, then that is actually xenophobia. So that's still not colorism. That's a different type of discrimination. So a lot of women, they try to empathy bait on YouTube by using the colorism buzzword, because they know that, you know, if they're dark skinned and then they say, oh, I'm suffering from colorism, they know that people are more likely to click on their videos and listen to them. Because let's think about this here. A lot of unambiguous black women have actually talked about feeling invisible. If you don't believe me, please go check out Chrissy's channel. Go check out I Am a Low Host channel. Go check out Queen Chalma's channel, because those are some of the main channels. Paris Milan, who deleted her channel because of me. So a lot of those content creators, they have talked extensively. And by the way, a lot of them don't even identify as African American. They identify with being, you know, Nigerian American or something like that. So a lot of those women, they came onto YouTube kind of popularizing their content by using colorism as the buzzword, when in reality, those women were just suffering from xenophobia. So, like I said, a lot of these women, they come here and they're fighting over American men because they associate America with wealth. Why else would they come to the country in a lot of cases? And I'm not against immigration, obviously, but I'm just saying that, like, for a lot of people who have a history of immigration, like maybe they're first generation, second generation, a lot of people come to the United States because of the wealth opportunities here, because of the infrastructure here. And so a lot of these women, they're coming here hoping that they could get an American man. So they don't want a Nigerian man. They don't want a man from the Caribbean. They don't want a man from Jamaica or a man from whatever country they're from. A lot of these women who are complaining, a lot of them don't want those men, so that's why they're mad. It's because maybe she is unambiguous from Nigeria and she's only attracting Nigerian men. And she doesn't want that. She moved all the way across the world so that she hopefully didn't have to deal with any more of those Nigerian men. So she doesn't want to come to the United States and still have the same problems that she had back in Nigeria. She was hoping that by moving out of Nigeria, she would be moving away from Nigerian problems. But a lot of these women are shocked because here in the United States, you know, it's such a melting pot to the point where we are actually familiar with Nigerian Americans. Some people, they do prefer to be with someone who has the same background as them, someone who grew up watching the same movies, or maybe they only want to be friends with people who speak English as their first language because it's easier for them to understand. Whatever their reasons are, if they are disparaging your people group or they're being mean to you because of where you're from, that is actually xenophobia. That's not colorism. Someone not wanting to be your friend or you not being the popular girl at work, that's not colorism. It could be xenophobia if they say, like, oh, the rude African girl or something. Okay, yeah, then it could be xenophobia. But calling things colorism that are not colorism, yeah, we're no longer taking it seriously. And especially since a lot of those same unambiguous women, they wouldn't turn around and put on the cape for anybody light skinned. They don't put on the cape for people who benefit from texturism. Look at how they treat people who are Ethiopian, Eritrean, people who have a Somali background. Look at how they treat them and how they call them aliens and say they have big foreheads and stuff. So it's like, okay, if you are being mean to other people based on the countries that they're from, you can't get mad when people decide to keep the same energy. And you also can't get mad when it affects your collective image in a negative way. And also, when it comes to Pan-Africanism, let's be honest, Pan-African only exists on the internet for the most part. That's the only place where I hear people talking about, oh, well, there should be black unity amongst everyone, and I love every different type of black person. That's not really the case for the most part in real life. If you were to walk into a store that is owned by people from a certain country in Africa and you're not from that country and you don't speak the language or have the same culture as them, oftentimes you will maybe be treated like an other. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're treated badly, but you may not feel the same camaraderie with people from other countries as you would someone who's from the United States. So this Pan-Africanism thing, that is another hypocrisy, because it's like, okay, so basically if I'm not a Pan-Africanist, now I'm a xenophobic person. So I'm showing xenophobia if I'm not a Pan-Africanist. So do you see the hypocrisy? Do you see how people, they actually try to bully you into these social justice movements so that you can be their mule, so that you can build up their community, so you can support their businesses. But then when it's time for them to support you as a multiracial woman, or when it's time for them to celebrate your beauty, then they're not going to do it. In fact, they'll call you regular. They'll say you're mediocre. They'll say that like you're not pretty. They'll try to invalidate your identity. So it's like, why should we be required to validate the identity of unambiguous people from other countries when the energy is not reciprocated? And another thing that I've noticed too, part of the reason why some African Americans get offended is because sometimes people from other countries, they try to define African Americans based on slavery and Jim Crow. And there are plenty of African Americans who do not identify with being a slave. I've never picked cotton in my life. I have never been on anybody's field or in anybody's house. No, I've never been in the master's bed or whatever other shit people have tried to say to me. It's like, no, we've never done that. So there are a lot of African Americans who will get offended because sometimes people from other countries, they try to use slavery talking points as a humbling tactic against African Americans. But then those same women from those countries get mad when like African American men won't date them, or they'll get mad when African American women don't want to be their friend or something. And another thing I've noticed too is that people will comment on YouTube videos and they'll be like, oh, you're participating in the Diaspora War. So it's like, okay, now my freedom of speech is being policed, so now I can't even make a YouTube video. If I make a YouTube video, it's a form of war. Diaspora wars. Like, why do you even have to use that type of language? Oh, this is a war. It reminds me of social justice warriors. So basically, if you state your own opinion, you are participating in a diaspora war. If you are not a Pan-Africanist, you are xenophobic. If you do not prefer to date Nigerians or people from other African countries, now you are being xenophobic, because how dare you not accept people from these countries into your dating pool? Do you see the gaslighting? If I were to go to another country, if I were to go to Nigeria or something, and I see that a lot of Nigerian women are preferred, well, I wouldn't get mad. Like, I'm in Nigeria. So yeah, like I understand that people might think that Nigerian women are pretty. And this is another thing. I've noticed a lot of women from other countries, they actually do see African Americans as exotic. And I have noticed that too. There's almost this dynamic where sometimes people will try to almost compete. It's almost like they're trying to compete with the beauty of African American women. And it's really silly, because there are African Americans who look like how Nigerians look, and then there are also African Americans who are maybe mixed race who look a little bit different. But I found that to be weird as well. That's something else I've noticed online, where it's like people are trying to make it into a competition. Another hypocrisy is that I've seen Nigerian women, they will say, I'm a Nigerian princess or a Nigerian baddie or whatever. But then if you say that you are a Creole princess or something like that, then you get called colorist. And it's like, how is it colorist to embrace my own identity? So I have to respect your identity. I have to respect your country, but you don't have to respect mine. And then if I make a YouTube video stating my opinions and practicing my freedom of speech, now I'm engaging in diaspora wars. So the way to not engage in diaspora wars is by not creating YouTube videos. So do you see the silencing tactic? Do you see the narcissism? The only way to appease these people is to date them and to not say anything negative about them while simultaneously letting them say negative things about you. Do you see the overlap with how it aligns with people who have inferiority complexes? It's yet another type of inferiority complex. So my psychological theory is that a lot of women who are unambiguous and also have a background from another country, they're dealing with multiple inferiority complexes, not just about their phenotype, but also about their nationality or kind of like their ethnic background as well. So that's another layer. And that's a layer of psychological trauma that they don't talk about on their YouTube channels. They only want to talk about the colorism thing so that they can attract those American dollars and they can attract those African American subscribers. when half of those African American subscribers can't even relate to the level of trauma that some of those women have gone through. And then some of these women have the audacity to turn around and get mad when you haven't gone through the same struggle as them. So they get mad when you say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't relate to that. I've never experienced people telling me I'm too dark or something, or people talking about my hair or talking about my facial features. I've never experienced that. That has never been a big enough trauma in my life to where I'm sensitive about it. So I don't care. Like, if somebody were to say the word blackie right now, I wouldn't get like all worked up or anything, because nobody's ever, I don't have any traumas attached to that word, or, you know, like I don't have the same psychological sensitivities. And that is something that a lot of these women do not address on their YouTube channels. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Do you think that people are actually conflating xenophobia with colorism? Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.